Good morning. It's early morning. It's like, what time is it? 1:30. Came here after I got off work. We're gonna work on stitches to get that power steering pump put in there. I actually found a really good spot for it, I think, and it's gonna go right in this area. There's even a hole right there. I think I can go through. Just gonna move these wires out of the way a little bit to get it stuck in there. So I'm kind of excited about that. It might actually work perfect. Let's get flipped around here and I'll show you what we got. All right, so here's the pump. Don't worry about all that mess behind there. It's for that Camaro. But so this is the pump. It's a Volvo power steering pump. Here's the part number if you want it. 5N5 13K 514CB. There's also a CC also. It's one of the part numbers, but yeah, this little guy puts out, well, the amp that feeds this from the factory car, the Volvo, which would be like a, let's see, a 2004 to 2013 C30, C70, S40, and V50. This needs an 80 amp fuse or circuit breaker. One thing that I found out that since these have, you've got your one trigger wire that tells this, because it's got its own controller inside here. So this is the wire that says I'm running. These two wires, they are CAN bus, and you can tell because they're twisted. Like everything that has a kind of communications type of deals are, or talk and communications will be twisted pair, what they call it. So, but these are CAN bus, so it's actually the CAN bus inside here, or the controller will talk via CAN bus to the ECM and all the other systems on the car, and it'll use speed, how hard you're turning, all that thing to very up and down the speed of the motor down here to give you more pressure or less pressure. Without the CAN, I have read without the CAN that it will revert to like limp mode, which is 70%. I found that in a couple different spots, so I believe it. I don't know. We'll see it. That thing has skinny tires on it anyways, so hell, we could probably do good with 40%. So 80 amp fuse here. This needs, from the factory, it's got a 10 amp fuse on it. Bad thing is the Holley, we're going to use the Holley to control this. So whenever we're, around 30 mile an hour, 40 mile an hour or below, this will be running. If we're on the highway, it'll turn off. If we're wide open throttle, it'll turn off. So for the track racing, no need for the power steering pump to be running. So we'll turn it off. The Holley has a max output of 2 amps. So we're going to have to use a relay to actuate this, just to be on the safe side. I doubt it uses 10 amps to actuate this. This wire looks like it's probably 20 gauge. It's tiny, 18 gauge maybe. So I highly doubt that it uses 10 amp. But anyways, just to be safe, we're gonna add a relay. No big deal. Here's all my notes. Done quite a few notes, or studying. So your red wire, gonna get the 80 amp fuse on it, and it's constant power. Black goes to ground, negative, or to your battery, negative. The gray with the blue tracer is going to be your signal wire, basically, telling it to turn on the 10 amp fuse. The 2 CAN bus wires, I'm not going to use them. With no CAN, operates at 70%. Oh, that's got a 2.5 second delay, too. From what I read, when this thing starts up, it does its little checks. So that's probably why it takes a couple seconds to start up. But the Dominator's got a 2 amp max on the output, so that's why we got to run a relay. But we need to make a bracket. We're going to keep this bracket because it's got little rubber isolators. They say this thing's pretty quiet, so the rubber isolators will also help keep the vibration down. Here's a fitting you need. There are a million sources online of this conversion, so if you need a part number or something, there's just a quick Google search will find the aluminum one for a -6, or there's a metal, or there's a steel one. I'd recommend the steel one, but I guess nobody has trouble with the aluminum ones. So thing's a little awkward to hold. They also have another pump that has a remote reservoir. Like, let me put this back down. This part is a lot shorter, and it's got a little hose coming up to another little remote reservoir. So it's a little bit shorter. Might be a little better for some people's applications, but this will work for what we're going to do. That hole right there. Go. Yeah, that's going to work perfect. Yep, way up under the bumper, so it shouldn't hit anything. And that hole is right by the fuse block up there. I might make the hole a little bit bigger. Oh, we'll see. This thing is turning out sick. You can't even tell it's in there from here. Look under here. There's the bracket. I got a nice cutout here for the tube, for the charge tube. Kind of hard to see from that angle. Got a nice gusset here. I'm gonna sandblast all that and get it painted, or paint it. There's another gusset here. That's the pressure line there coming out. Lots of room. In the return, it'll just be a short line over there and there. And of course the wiring, which will just, run up there somewhere. I like it. I got 2 more holes to drill. Use some nut certs down there, those 2 holes there. So I gotta take this tube out. But so far I like it. You can put his plastic plate back on there and you will never know it's there. If I can get a shot of it coming through the top. I'll take it off and I'll show you the bracket. It was just a couple bends and some bracket, or some gussets. So let me yank it out of there real quick. I'll show you. And here's the bracket. So this is just a flat piece. I think it's like 12 gauge maybe. And I use my plasma cutter to cut the circle with my little protractor. And then made that bend and said I wanted it 4 inches from the bottom of that frame. Made my other bend on my bender. And there it is. So we still use the factory bracket here. We cut our little slot out right there. Just fits up in there. Put your bolts in. Good to go. Actually pretty solid too. I don't think it'd be that solid, but it is. So now we need to put a couple more of these nut certs in. I don't know if you guys have ever used these nut certs, but they are amazing. Like if you need to mount something into sheet metal, it's really thin. It's not, it's really thin, so there's not enough room to thread it, right? So just do a nut cert. Works beautifully. There are a million different brands of nut cert install tools, but this one I got, AMJ Joy, sorry. It's just a Amazon special. Depending on what kit you get, you know, you get all the different nuts. We're using 10x15. Oops, you know it. And so you need to drill a hole big enough for this to go through. And this just so happens this one is 1/2 inch, so kind of stepped up from a small bit up to a big bit. These are the inserts you put into the head for the different sizes. This is a 10x14. I use inserts on that cover for the Camaro, for the shifter cover in there to mount that thing. So now we will put these in. Just screw it on there. I'm not going to be able to do this. Wish I had somebody here to help the camera. But yeah, that's all it is. You just squeeze the handles. You right where those little lines are. See if I can get a better look at it. Where these little lines are, it'll squish down on the back side of the metal. There's lots of videos online on what they look like. Yeah, just put it up in that hole, squeeze the handles, and put you down for a second because I can't hold this. Okay, it's all squished in there. And you just release it. Ta-da! I'll do the other one. There she blows. Turned out pretty nicely. Oh, another thing, I did make this hole bigger too. Did a little hammer and a little cutting. Well, that's not really a good area to see it, but kind of got some sharp edges up there. So I'll just cut a hose in half, a little vacuum hose, stick it on there. That way nobody gets cut and nothing rubs on it and gets cut. So no big deal. I like that. Get it painted, and then we'll do the wiring, and then we'll be done. We've got a transmission cooler. That guy we're gonna put up under here also. Probably put it right in this area. Nice little cavity right there. That's where the factory exhaust goes. But we'll do that a little bit later. Do some more rib nuts on that bad boy. So I guess next up is get some wiring figured out on this thing. Okay, there's the bracket, all painted, all pretty. Now we're working on some wiring. So we've got, oh, I lose my plug right now, there it is. So I've got this plug here, that's the trigger. Got it twisted and soldered. Next, I'm working on, this is the main power going to it, so this will go to that distribution block up there on the wheel well, and this will just ground right to the frame. And I like to use, I'll cut these, I don't like the yellow part, so I'll just cut the goods out of the middle of it, and we'll put it on each end. Since this wire is so thick, you can't twist it like you can this. Like that stuff you just twist and solder. This stuff you have to, it's still nice to use just a mechanical connection. If you can get solder in there, you can, but this big stuff doesn't like to warm up enough to soak in the solder. So give the camera to my camera lady. Show you how I do it. Get a little bit off there. A little bit off there. Oh, we gotta cut the crimp out. if I can not cut my finger off. You can buy these in the store without the plastic on them, but at the moment I don't have that, so just use the knife to push it out. Ta-da! It's been gutted. This is just big enough for this wire. Give it a good squeeze, make sure it's on there. Now, I still like to squeeze this part here. There, so I'll just put it in here, squish it. There's that side. Now we'll stick this in here. Crimp it. Squeeze it. Now we got a nice tight connection. And of course, can't forget the heat shrink. Grab the gun. And now that's done. Yes, this is red. It's not ground, but they didn't have any black wire at the parts store, so we're gonna use red. It'll be okay. Promise. All done. Put the light on. There. Went down the street to hose place, had this hose made. It's got a regular hose. This part, I don't remember the part number. And then we got the cooler here. And here's the top side. There's the pump right there. Easily accessible. We'll use this relay to control it. Okay, now we're going to show how we program the Dominator to control the power steering pump and the transmission cooler. They're not too bad, not too difficult to do. We're going to open the file. Okay, so here we got the program. First off, we're going to need the I/O, so input/output ICF. If you don't already have that, just go to Toolbox, add individual config, and you see here where the I/O, double click that, and then just the base config. So you just double click that, open it up, and then it will put this icon on your toolbar. So X out of here. We'll open up the input/output ICF, and since we are controlling these items, they are outputs coming out of the Dominator. And you can see here I've already got the power steering set up and the trans cooler fan, but we'll just start one from scratch. So we'll just put trans cooler. So you name your output, and then you go over here to the enable button, click that. And if you noticed, all this stuff lit up. So now we need to assign how the output is going to be triggered. You got pulse width, modulated, positive or negative, 12 volt, ground. Don't use these very often at all. So we'll just say we're going to use ground on this one. Okay, that valve's been changed and has reset some configure parameters. Please check them if applicable. We'll go over here to config. This is how we're going to configure the transmission cooler fan to come on. The number of input triggers. So this output will activate when the transmission temperature. See right here, we got transmission temperature. That's from the sensor that's in the transmission pan. The value is 0 degrees Fahrenheit is lower than allowed. Please click yes to minimum, because the transmission temp sensor starts at 100 degrees. So we're going to bump that up to about 150 degrees. It's a good spot to be. So when the transmission temp is above 150 degrees, it will turn on. There's also a selection here for below, but I'll show you where we use that on the power steering pump trigger. And then we could back out of here. So we got this activated. Go back. So the transcooler, ground activated. We configured it. Now we have to pin map it. So you've got your connectors. And this is an output again, so we need to pick view outputs. And now we've got this transcooler, the one we just made, and it's a ground trigger. If it was a positive, like 12 volt trigger, then it'd have a positive P there. But since it's ground, all we do at this point is just grab it, drag and drop. Just find anywhere, put it there. And now it is assigned to pin B5. So on the back of your connector, it's got all the numbers. It's like 1 through 9, and there's 4 or 5 rows of pins on there. And you just go to B5, and that's where your wire would come out, and then the Dominator would actuate it with a ground. So we're not going to use that. We'll just go and put it back up here. Click done. We'll go ahead and disable this because we don't need it. I'll show you how we configured the electric power steering pump. It is a 12 volt output going to that relay that I showed you. So we'll go to the configure screen. So we've got 3 input triggers on this one. So we don't want the power steering pump to run while it's just sitting there without the engine running. So it's pulling amps, you don't want to drain your battery just sitting there. So it will not activate unless the engine RPM is above 650 RPM. It will also activate when the speed is below 50 miles per hour. Because if you're on the highway, going 70 miles an hour, you don't need a power steering pump to run. And lastly, the throttle position sensor. The power steering pump will not come on below, or will come on below 75%. So if you're wide open throttle on the 2-step, the power steering pump will turn off. And if you're going down the track or racing at 100%, 75% or above, or 76% or above, it will turn off. So here you can see you can click all or single. You have to click all. That way all 3 of these options have to be met before the power steering pump will turn on. One thing we do have to change is the mile per hour. It, like he said, when he's coming down in speed, about to make a turn, the power steering pump will basically turn on right in the middle of the turn. And I forgot to equate for the 2.5 second delay that the pump has. So we'll just put it up to 65, 60, somewhere around there. And that'll alleviate that issue. And let's go back here and I'll show you how we did the transmission cooler fan. Pretty much the same way. It's only got one sensor input trigger, and that's using the transmission temp sensor that's in the pan. So when the temperature is above 150, fan turns on. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Well, I do believe this project has come to an end. Ken said he's enjoying driving that car with power steering pump, having it back. He doesn't have to, turn real hard or put any extra effort into turning anymore. So that's awesome. Appreciate you guys watching the channel, and we will see you on the next one.